Well, hello there. This is Preacher Man Piper coming to you again. I wanted to talk to you about something to try to uh, help you. I've told the story on here on how I started smoking a pipe, but I've had a lot of people ask me this question. They were raised up in church, and they're still going to church today. I mean, they've been faithful in church all these years, but they've always heard it preached in church that it was a sin to smoke and that you need to give it up and you need to quit. And because God don't want you to smoke, because you are defiling the body when you do so. And so they say, so is my smoking a pipe or smoking a cigar a sin? Well, I wanted to come on here and talk to you about that because I wanted you to get a clear understanding if I can help you with this. The Bible plainly tells us that it's not what goes in the mouth that defiles the body. It's what comes out of the mouth, out of the heart, that defiles the body. In other words, anger, resentment, gossiping, hatred, unforgiveness. Those things are what defiles the body. Now, I know because I was raised up in a home, and I was raised up under my dad's preaching. My dad always preached that smoking cigarettes was a sin. And he had a lot of reasons to do so because we had a man who lived next door to us that one day the wife of the man that lived next door to us came over and knocked on the door, and my dad answered the door, and she said, "Would you come and talk to my husband?" Said he's been a heavy smoker all of his life, and the doctors have told him he don't have but about 4 to 6 months at the very most to live. That he's gotten cancer from the cigarettes that he smokes. And I'm trying to get him to stop smoking them. But I just felt like if you'd come over and talk to him. Well, that evening, my dad and I was just a little kid at that time, we walked out of the house and walked across the yard and went over, and this man was sitting out on his porch, sitting on his steps. And he seen my dad, and he said, "Hello, preacher," and looked at me and said, "Well, hey there, little buddy." And my dad said, "Your wife told us about what the doctors have told you." He said, "Yeah." He said, they told me I don't have but 4 to 6 months to live. And he was smoking a cigarette at the time that we were talking to him. And my dad said, "Well, did they tell you what would happen if you quit smoking?" He said, "Well, they said I might gain a week, maybe 2 weeks at the most. But they really doubted that it would do any difference." And we stood and talked there to him for a while, and my dad talked to him about his soul. And he said that he had made things right with God, and that he was prepared to go, and he was no longer afraid to die. Well, after we talked to him for a while, his wife came out, and my dad just looked at his wife and said, "Ma'am, I understand why you're wanting him to quit smoking," but said even his doctors have told him it would probably do him no good if he did quit. And since this is something that he likes to do, I can't see any harm in him going ahead and smoking while he's able to. And she understood that, and he understood that, and that was the end of that discussion. We had a man in our church, his name was Kermit Schultz. And one day we went over to Kermit's house. And when we got over there, we went out in the backyard, because he was out in the backyard, so we ran around, and he was back there, and he was smoking cigarettes. And anyway, he talked to Dad, and when he got done smoking it, he put it out, and then we went in the house, and they did the rest of the talking and all of that. So then we left, and I said to Dad, Dad, he's the treasurer of the church. He said, yeah. He said, now I know what you're going to say. You're going to say that maybe he shouldn't be smoking, but said, that's between him and God. And I know maybe I should try to find somebody that doesn't smoke to hold a position in the church. But he said, we can't find a better man than Kermit as a treasurer. And that was the end of that discussion. I honestly don't know whatever happened to Kermit, because he was still going whenever I left and never really went back. And so I understood what they were talking about when they did that. Well, when I started smoking a pipe, I was in Germany. I had already been called to preach before I ever went in the service, and so when I came back and I told my dad about me smoking a pipe, I said, because I have all these ulcers and everything, this keeps me from having them to come back. And I said, I don't know what to do about it. I said, because actually, if I keep living with the ulcers, I'm going to have about 3 to 4 times a year that I'm going to go 6 weeks at each time and not be able to speak, let alone eat or anything else. And I said, I've prayed and asked the Lord that if it's wrong for me to smoke this pipe, if he would just tell me so, I would be willing to live with that, because he's the one that called me to preach. He'd know within those 6 weeks, 3 or 4 times a year, 6 weeks at a time, that I couldn't preach, he would understand that because he's the one that called me. And he said, well, son, he said, you're not a pastor, you're an evangelist. I said, yes, sir, I know that. And he said, you're not doing it just because you want to do it. You're doing it because it's helping you with those ulcers. So he said, it's kind of like you're having a form of medicine. Plus, you said it don't have any of the chemicals that cigarettes has in it. And it don't have any of the things that's harmful to the body that the cigarettes have in them. He said, and if God doesn't convict you of that, I wouldn't worry about it. It don't mean that you have to be smoking your pipe when you're out and about, when you're preaching a revival. You can smoke it at nighttime in your room. And so I went on like that for years. Every now and then, someone would find out about it. But as time went on, everybody understood and everybody was okay with it. But now I was in my late teens when I went in the service. That's when I started smoking pipe. I'm fixing to be 75 here in December. And I can honestly tell you that from that time to this time, I've never felt convicted by God. Now, I've been convicted by a lot of churches, and I've been convicted by a lot of narrow-minded preachers. But I've never been convicted of smoking my pipe or a cigar. And way back there years ago, when I was really trying to deal with this thing, because I didn't want to disappoint God, one day when I was reading my Bible, God said, what did I say when I finished creating everything on this earth? Well, I went back to Genesis and I read that when he had finished creating everything on this earth, he not only said it was good, but he said it was very good. And he impressed upon me that there was nothing wrong with tobacco. And he impressed on me that it was an herb. And I said, it's an herb. He said, study it out. So I did. I studied it out. I went and talked to people in the know. Tobacco is an herb. I don't know why I don't say herb since it's H-E-R-B, but it isn't. It's herb. And so when I realized that I was smoking something that's pure, just tobacco only, no chemicals, no added stuff, no added this, no added that, no added chemicals, no added bad stuff, and I was smoking something pure, that I was only smoking an herb. And so from that point on, I never had a problem with it up until this time, and I don't have a problem with it now. And I don't want you to have a problem with it. So that's the reason I wanted to talk to you about it. I wanted you to know it's not a sin to smoke a pipe or to smoke a good cigar. It's not. It's not, because it's an herb, and God made the herbs for us. Actually, God made a lot of things for us that we abuse, but the natural tobacco that's grown, the natural tobacco that's grown, does not have additives. When you see on a package of tobacco that nicotine is an additive in the tobacco, that is not true. That's a natural thing in the tobacco. So I just hope that this helped you. I hope that you get something out of this, and I hope that you'll continue smoking your pipe and smoking your cigars and enjoying them to the fullest. Okay? All right, I'm going to get off here now because this is too long. But I wanted to really make sure that I made this as clear as I could, and I hope I have. So until I see you again, happy smokes. Bye-bye.